feds have now busted another ring of these alleged gang members. They found them in an apartment and arrested 7 of them. Now, most of the 7 individuals who were caught in this...
So an entire apartment full of gang members was just taken down by Homeland Security and the NYPD. But while this huge bust is definitely a step in the right direction, New York remains America's largest sanctuary city with over 3 million apartments where more gang members could be lurking. On top of that, this gang isn't just in New York. They've set up shop in cities all across the country. And as you're about to see, tracking down even just one of these individuals is as difficult as it is dangerous.
They walked across the border for a better life, but now they are walking out in handcuffs after police say their American dream was to commit crime.
He tells me he came to the U.S. for a better way of life and denies the charges against him.
ICE agents have been watching this particular subject for at least a week.
Now, most of the 7 individuals who were caught in this apartment in the Bronx actually had significant rap sheets and warrants out for the arrests after they had committed, allegedly, multiple crimes in the United States.
On this day, it took about 16 ICE agents to arrest 5 immigrants who ICE says are undocumented, have criminal records, and had been released on bail by local jurisdictions instead of being turned over to ICE.
Do you have enough resources to do this?
No, we don't.
One of the other members of the group had already been ordered deported by an immigration judge, but because these individuals are from Venezuela and the Maduro regime refuses to accept deportation flights, these Venezuelan gangbangers are stuck in limbo in the United States.
So recently, a gang member went home wearing his ankle monitor, which led police to arrest him and all of his buddies. But what nobody's talking about is there are so many places for these gangs to be hiding, not just in New York, but also across the country, that tracking them down is going to take quite some time. Unless the new president and border czar go on a hiring spree, which it sounds like they're going to do, as the incoming administration has vowed to increase federal resources in troublesome sanctuary cities like New York if they fail to cooperate with what will be the largest deportation plan in American history, a plan proponents say is necessary because for the last 3 years the country has experienced record immigration, but as we're learning, not all of it has been positive. Which is obvious with all the problems New York is having with gang members living in our apartments and in some cases down the halls from women and children in city-funded asylum shelters. Places which ban police from entering unless they have a specific warrant for a specific person who they know is inside. Which means law enforcement can't just roam the halls of these taxpayer-funded former luxury hotels to maintain order and get rid of the bad guys. Which is a problem now that we know the bad guys are smuggling weapons inside some of these places hidden in DoorDash delivery bags. Which brings us to the real reason why sanctuary cities like New York are gonna be the focus of this new deportation agenda. These are places where gang members can hide out before exporting their crime to the rest of the country. But this recent gang bust in the Bronx looks like it's going to be a much more frequent occurrence in the near future, as national security threats and dangerous individuals are sought out by Homeland Security before they can act. But as you're about to see, this is going to be pretty strange for many New Yorkers who could soon see ICE agents knocking down the doors of apartment buildings just like this one. So here we have a photo of the apartment building where this gang was hiding out, and it looks just like every other apartment building you'll see in this city. But the way federal agents found out about this gang hideout is shocking.
It was a joint raid with the NYPD and Homeland Security, and they were able to identify the group by tracing them to the apartment using an ankle monitor that had been administered federally to one of the individuals alleged.
So inside this apartment, you had 7 gang members all staying there, and one of them decided one evening to come home wearing his ankle monitor, and that's what led the federal government right to him. Now, although it's shocking enough that a gang member wanted by the federal government was able to live in a New York City apartment, it's even more shocking when you consider the person in question had 3 prior arrests and had already been ordered deported. And although he was roaming the city as a free man and could have removed his ankle monitor, he didn't even bother. Which is pretty frightening because this person was living along with other gang members. They hadn't changed their life one bit. And it must also mean that nobody's really monitoring these ankle monitors. However, what's even more interesting is this gang bust was not orchestrated by the NYPD. Yes, they were involved, but this was actually orchestrated by the Department of Homeland Security. And having federal agents raid an apartment building that's got criminals with active warrants living in it puts everyone in danger. These are apartment buildings. What if the criminals decide to resist? That could be very, very bad for everybody involved, including the neighbors. And that's because these gang members are some of the most dangerous people in the entire country. And in New York, they've been able to take advantage of our sanctuary city laws and policies and have done everything in their power to exploit the ongoing asylum crisis. In fact, a few months back, one gang member confessed to police that since security guards at city-funded shelters don't put food through their scanners, they were able to smuggle weapons inside of those facilities using DoorDash and Grubhub delivery bags, which they then go on to use while riding mopeds and committing crimes of opportunity or to intimidate other asylum seekers into joining their criminal empire. On top of that, these gangs are behind much of the shoplifting and reselling of stolen goods on street corners in middle-class neighborhoods, which is where they get the money to rent apartments in the first place. Because unfortunately, our laws have decriminalized most theft.
Now, most of the 7 individuals who were caught in this apartment in the Bronx actually had significant rap sheets and warrants out for the arrest. One of the other members of the gang that was caught in this apartment actually had crossed 2 different U.S. borders. He crossed into the United States.
So this apartment really was a goldmine of criminal activity. Everyone arrested had long rap sheets. These were all very dangerous individuals. On top of that, many of the folks arrested had already been ordered out of the country. Now, what does that tell you about sanctuary city rules and policies? Because if these laws and policies allow gang members to hide in plain sight and blend in with the rest of New York while committing crimes, they're not exactly making the world a safer place, are they? And for some reason, we have this idea in America that sanctuary city laws are great for immigration and that they help everyone. But the thing is, law-abiding immigrants don't benefit from these laws one bit, and that includes asylum seekers who are here waiting for their future day in court. They don't benefit from these laws either. In fact, all these laws do is create safe spaces for criminals who have no intention of reforming or changing their ways. Some of the people that were arrested in this gang bust had records going back to 2022. They probably thought they could hide out here forever. And the scary thing is that if their friend who was wearing his ankle bracelet hadn't decided to wear it home, none of them would have been discovered or caught. They'd still be out there. Which means that right now there could be hundreds of these operations throughout our city that nobody even knows about yet. But before we look at how federal agents track these criminals down, sometimes without the help of local sanctuary city police, it's important to understand the one reason why this particular gang, Tren de Aragua, has exploded in the United States despite the best efforts of law enforcement.
But because these individuals are from Venezuela and the Maduro regime refuses to accept deportation flights and provide the necessary documentation to ICE to allow them to carry out deportations, these Venezuelan gangbangers are stuck in limbo in the United States.
So if any of you were wondering why we keep hearing about this one particular gang, it's because once they get here, we're essentially stuck with them. There's no way to send them back, which could change once the new presidential administration takes over. However, not only is it hard for the country to deport these individuals once they're caught, they're also a gang which profits from human exploitation. That's their thing. And in cities like New York, you've got a massive asylum crisis that they're taking advantage of. First off, many of these criminals came here saying, "Oh, I'm here to seek asylum," when they actually weren't. And then once they get to a place like New York, they're surrounded by legitimate asylum seekers who they can then start trying to exploit and bring into their gang. Remember, they've got weapons inside some of these very shelters. The police aren't allowed inside. And if they go in there and they tell a person, "Hey, join us or something bad might happen to you," what choice does that person have? You can read about it right here. This isn't just speculation. They're recruiting people, they're giving them weapons, they're giving them mopeds. And this New York Post article also says that traffic cops, they can't even ticket these things because oftentimes they're stored on shelter property, which is not like a physical street, so they're inaccessible. But obviously this all reveals that something very, very wrong is happening in this country with these gangs being able to grow and succeed in their criminal endeavors because of sanctuary cities, and the fact that local laws and policies often exist in opposition to efforts of federal agents who want to make our country and these cities safer is also a massive issue. And as you're about to see, it makes the job of those who are supposed to track down these criminals even harder than it already is. So in a lot of America's major metropolitan areas, you've got progressive laws that favor criminals, and you've got other laws that exist in opposition to federal immigration policies. And what that means is that you're gonna have criminals hiding out in places like this trying to blend in with the regular population. But because there's so many people here, tracking them down and finding them can be extremely difficult, even for the most well-funded of law enforcement operations.
So after several hours of waiting, they've just found one of their targets and we're on the move. When we arrive, we see an immigrant from the Dominican Republic who ICE says is here illegally. And as a convicted ICE agents have been watching this particular subject for at least a week.
This is a big problem. Look at this. You've got dangerous criminals who aren't in jail. They're out living their lives as normal members of whatever populace they're embedded in. In this bust, which happened in Boston, you had multiple squad cars, multiple agents, all working on getting this one guy. And when you look at stuff like this that says there are over 1,000 gang members and thousands of criminals living in a city like New York, apprehending everyone's going to be a monumental operation. And not only is this going to take a lot of work, require a lot of agents, because these people could be anywhere in a society. When agents decide to make their move, they better make sure nobody else is around. What if something like this happens on a public street or someone flees and they've got a weapon? And what's even worse about this is some of these individuals that are now being sought by law enforcement, they were at one point in the back of a local police car or in a local jail. They were in custody. They were in a place where they couldn't do anybody any harm, and then they were released, and then the government has to start all over looking for them, which is what happened in the case of the 7 gang members busted in the Bronx. They were all in jail at one point, and then they were all set free.
On this day, it took about 16 ICE agents to arrest 5 immigrants who ICE says are undocumented, have criminal records, and had been released on bail by local jurisdictions instead of being turned over to ICE, each requiring 40 to 80 hours of surveillance beforehand.
So when you've got someone who's bad and you set them free when they're still wanted for other crimes, that is a bad law and a bad policy. And laws like this do not fight crime or protect anyone. And the logical way to deal with crime and keep people safe is the opposite of what sanctuary cities do. It literally makes no sense for local law enforcement to arrest someone, find out that they've got a federal warrant, and then release that person and not help the federal government bring them in for other crimes. But that's how things work in New York. Our police are not allowed to cooperate with the federal government, and if they have someone and the federal government asks for that person, that is called an ICE detainer request, and our local police are forbidden from honoring those. But things haven't always been this way. In fact, there used to be an ICE outpost at Rikers Island, New York's infamous jail, a jail which holds a revolving cast of criminals to the tune of around 10,000 every single day. And that's part of the reason why this gang stuff is so out of control right now. In the past, if you had a bunch of criminals in a city like New York and they all got put in the back of police cars and hauled off to jail, the federal government would be there waiting for them, and they could safely pick those individuals up without a struggle because they're already in custody and get them not only off the streets, but also out of the country permanently if they've been ordered deported. But that ICE outpost at Rikers, that was disbanded a long time ago, and the incoming border czar says that he's going to get cooperation from sanctuary cities one way or another, even if it involves prosecuting mayors in some cases.
President-elect Trump won, pledging to do much more, including mass deportations. And after Democratic city and state officials vowed to block Trump's deportation plan, incoming border czar Tom Homan is doubling down with this warning.
If they cross that line and knowingly harbor and conceal illegal alien, well, I'm going to seek prosecution.
I am concerned of what he...
So it's worth noting that New York's Mayor Eric Adams has said that he's willing to work with the federal government because he understands that having gang members living all over our city is a big problem. Which probably means, at a minimum, the NYPD will not interfere with the federal government, but other sanctuary cities have vowed to resist. And the new border czar has apparently warned the city of Chicago, saying that he's coming there first. But it's important to understand that even if a sanctuary city mayor now decides that they're going to work with the federal government to clean up their city, a lot of the gang activity places like New York and Chicago are dealing with, it's already out of control. Not only because we have laws that may unknowingly harbor criminals once they're here, but also because some high-risk individuals may have entered the country without showing proper ID. And what that means is that a city like New York could have people living in it that are actually very dangerous, but are living under an assumed identity or a false identity and are essentially starting over when they may have already been ordered to leave.
We pressed ICE about its current mission. There are some who fear that ICE will also arrest immigrants that are here that may not have criminal records. To that, you say what?
To that, what we are focused on is obviously public safety, national security threats. But then there are those too that have exhausted all legal means. In the end, they've been ordered legally removed from the United States, and
So a crackdown is coming, and it is going to be focused on people who make this city, other cities, and the country less safe. But will it be successful? That's the question a lot of people have. Because not only are our local law enforcement agencies understaffed, our federal law enforcement agencies that deal with this are as well. On top of that, sanctuary cities might act as a magnet for internal migration within the United States because we've got laws here that protect the bad guys. And what could end up happening is as the new president walks into office, you could actually see more gang activity in the short term in places like New York. As these criminals who are doing everything they can to evade federal authorities realize they're running out of options. And even if the mayor of a sanctuary city does want to cooperate, what exactly does that even mean? He can't order the NYPD to do things that are against local laws that govern how they operate. What do you think is going to happen? Is there going to be a big crackdown in every sanctuary city at once? Is it just going to focus on places like Chicago that have been singled out as being particularly problematic? And what's going to happen in New York? Do you think that something's finally going to get done to get these gang members we've got living here, some of whom have been here for years, off the streets? Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.